What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I know your boy done goofed. They changed up the leaks last minute, so the actual characters coming from 2.1 are actually going to be Jingliu and Luocha. So for people who are asking for Jingliu and people who were actually asking for Luocha, they're coming in 2.1. I think Luocha is coming first half, Jingliu is coming second half. So that puts us in a very interesting position because now we have arguably two of the three best DPSs in the game coming in the same patch. So which one is the best one for you? That question I'm going to be addressing in this video. So if you enjoy this type of content, let me know by liking the video, leaving a comment in the comment section below, and consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get right into it. First, I'm going to talk to all my early to mid game players, okay? Early to mid game, all you're trying to do is getting through the game. Getting to a point in the game where you are able to compete in MOC and Pure Fiction, at least clear at least 30 stars, 33 stars, maybe. That's early to mid game, okay? Both Jingliu and Acheron are going to help you in that case. The only thing is that one character requires more investment than the other to perform at a decent mid-game level, okay? So Jingliu, for example, Jingliu gives herself a 50% crit rate buff. Why is that important? Is because like early to mid game, you're not going to have optimal crit stats. That 50% crit rate that she gives herself just for free, it's pretty much invaluable. It's going to boost up your damage so much. And that's why Jingliu is one of the best characters, one of the best DPS characters in the game. It's because she requires so little investment and you can invest more in crit damage and attack. And also speed. So her investment floor is really low when you compare it to Acheron. She also has a decently strong free-to-play option when it comes to her light cone in the Fall of an Eon. It's a 5-star her to shop light cone, which works decently well on her on my free-to-play account. That's the light cone I use on my Jingliu. So I know a thing or two about being early to mid-game running a Jingliu team. Okay, another thing about Jingliu is that she can adapt to her playstyle depending on what support she actually has on her team. So for instance, her best support is Bronya or Sparkle because of the action advance. Those two are pretty much her best two supports. However, if you don't have those two, she still works with other supports like Tingyun and Huahua, for example. Those two give her the ability to stay in her transformed state a little bit longer because of the energy acceleration that they provide. Bronya allows her to get more actions, but Jingliu Huahua Core gives her the ability to stay in the transformed state a little longer. So you can adapt the playstyle depending on the support you have. So Jingliu does an incredible amount of damage, same as Acheron. The only thing is that Acheron has the ability to hit a full board of enemies of 5, which Jingliu has to spend 2 skills or 2 turns to deal with 5 enemies. Acheron can just do it in 1 ultimate, right? But as far as investment goes, Jingliu is at a much lower floor and has a similar ceiling, if it makes sense. Also, one of her best teammates is Pella, which is a shared best teammate with Acheron. We're going to use this little Pella as a segue to start talking about Acheron. Acheron's value kind of changed when her banner was revealed, and let me explain. My initial argument for Acheron is that she needs a very specific set of support characters in her team for her to function optimally, okay? One of the requirements was a nihility character that would debuff, and then that debuff preferably had to have a positive effect on Acheron's damage. Pella is the ultimate character just for that, because Pella targets defense, which is something that Acheron doesn't have herself on her own kit. Also provides several debuffs depending on the Eidolons, which makes her a perfect partner for Acheron. Now, the sustain for the Acheron team was a little iffy because there is no nihility sustain hybrid character until Gallagher came out. So Gallagher is a character that can heal and then also inflicts 2 different debuffs at a very consistent pace. I'm actually going to drop a Gallagher guide video, which I do some calculations on how to optimally run him, but that's going to be later on. But Gallagher actually is Acheron's best sustain at this moment on her release. I think Aventurine is going to be a little better than Gallagher, but as of right now, Gallagher is her best sustain in the game. Arguably, Welt is, but actual sustain, healing sustain is probably Gallagher. The great thing is that Gallagher and Pella are on the banner. So if you're going to pull for Acheron, your odds are that you're going to pull a Gallagher and odds are you're going to pull a Pella. Another thing is that Gallagher, we're getting a free copy of Gallagher in 2.1 first half. You're already going to have a copy of her best sustain in the game as of right now. And you're also going to possibly pull a copy or some Eidolons of her best teammate, arguably, because this is her best like low investment teammate. So you're going to get at least 1 or 2 copies of Pella while pulling for Acheron. That leaves the last slot for the one last nihility character, which you can just slot in any nihility character that inflicts a debuff, like namely Kafka. Black Swan would be a perfect option. Server Wolf is probably the best option. Guanifan always helps, but I think we've gotten copies of Guanifan for free if I'm not mistaken. So you have options. If you have nothing else, like Sampo also works as he inflicts flicks the winch here. I know early to mid game is kind of hard to like actually build characters, but you can slowly build up to it. And the good thing about Acheron is that for you to get a massive damage bonus on Acheron, all you need to do is throw the 2 characters in the team. 2 agility characters on the team, she gets a massive damage bonus, almost as if you had a harmony character on the team already. So early to mid game, it's like, to me, it really depends on how much you want to invest early game into a character for it to function optimally. If you don't want to like hyper farm like relics early game, which in my opinion you shouldn't, I would go for Jingliu because she's way easier. I mean, you're going to have to wait a little bit. You're going to have to wait about 3 weeks, but I would do that. Jingliu is way easier to build, way easier to get up and running. You have a free-to-play option like that you can work towards that you're guaranteed to get. So that's another plus. And Jingliu is going to hit hard. She's going to be a top DPS character for a long time. Acheron, her banner makes her very much worth to summon. Actually, she provides a lot of quality of life with her technique. Her technique is just broken. It is probably the best technique in the game. Her only problem, which still remains, is going to be her light cone situation. Good night sleep well, it's a decent option, but honestly I would just prefer a light cone that gives me a debuff like resolution light cone or Kafka light cone or Silver Wolf's light cone. I prefer any of those over Good Night Sleep Well, but Good Night Sleep Well can work if you can make the team stack the debuffs, and if you have Gallagher Pella and a 3rd Nihility, it shouldn't be that hard to keep up that 90% damage bonus up with Good Night Sleep Well. And a good thing is that Good Night Sleep Well is also on the banner, on her light cone banner. So, but just to recap on the DPS, they both do similar damage. Jingliu has a lower floor. It's easier to get Jingliu up and running, but when you get them both up and running, I think they're in a similar playing field as E0 as 0. I think Jingliu might edge her out because of the light cone situation. But if you're going to elevate it to E0 S1, I think they're very, very close, very, very similar when it comes to damage output. I may do a Jingliu versus Acheron damage calculation video. I don't know yet, but I may just delve into that just to kill the curiosity. If your late game at this point is just preference, what character you like the best. Some people simp for Jingliu, and then some people simp for Acheron. It is what it is. So whatever character you think looks best, whatever character you think works best, whatever typing coverage you need the most, just go for that character. You can't go wrong with either. They both deal an insane amount of damage. All right, now let's talk about the sustains. We have Luocha and Aventurine coming out. So Luocha has been a long time coming. He was the 2nd character, I think, that released in the game. I don't remember correctly, but I think he was the 2nd character to release in the game, and he hasn't been back until almost a year later. People have been asking where he is. He's right here. He is still a very strong healer, a very strong sustainer. It's a character that it's overall a net positive on any team, unless you run the risk of being one-shotted. And that issue became glaringly obvious to me whenever I started doing Swarm. I would go through the entire thing, and then just the Swarm would just one-shot my entire team because like I just didn't have enough firepower to deal with the Swarm. I didn't do the right strategies at the time. So Luocha presented a very difficult thing to get over, which is getting one-shotted. But everything else, he can deal with it perfectly well. He has free heals. He doesn't need to use a skill pretty much at all. He heals for free. He cleanses and heals for free, essentially. He also has an AoE buff strip from the enemies, which is incredibly valuable. Allies can heal anytime they attack and they do damage. They can heal a portion of it back. So Luocha as a sustain is pretty much unparalleled in the amount of healing that he can do. However, that's where it stops. Like Luocha only does sustain. And if you're looking for just a straight up sustainer that is going to keep your team like up, let's say you're having issues running Blade and you need a sustainer to like keep your Blade alive, Luocha is probably the best bet. And that's where it stops. Luocha just purely sustains. And the main reason I have not really used Luocha ever since I pulled Huahua is because Luocha doesn't really give you enough utility. So Huahua and Fu Xuan for that matter give you what is called utility, which is aside from their main role, they give you an extra bonus here and there. For example, Fu Xuan gives you crit rate on the side. So she gives you 22% crit value for free just for activating her skill, okay? That is invaluable. She also increases your max HP. So for characters like Blade, that is a damage increase. Possibly for characters like Sam in the future who may or may not scale off HP, it's also a damage increase. Huahua gives you attack when she ults, and then she also gives you energy when she ults. That's a lot of utility aside from an incredible amount of healing. So Huahua pretty much does exactly the same thing Luocha does to a lesser degree because Huahua heals a little less, but she heals more often. She heals literally every single turn. It doesn't matter what it is, you heal every single turn. And she cleanses every single turn up to 6 times until you re-up her skill. So she has a lot of cleansing, a lot of healing. She also has utility in the sense of giving your team attack and then also giving your team energy. And that's the main reason. That's the only reason I'm using Huohua instead of Luocha in almost every team. Like I literally benched my Luocha because Huohua came out and I pulled her on a first 10 pull. Okay. Had that not been the case, Luocha would still be like running rampant in my account. And in the same token, we're gonna use that as a segue to start talking about Aventurine. Aventurine has the best shielding in the game. She gets heals for free. He also provides follow-up attacks support for characters like Topaz and Numbi, or a follow-up centric team. Like I said in my previous video, Topaz and Numbi and Aventurine are going to be the core for a follow-up centric damage dealer. It's a really good pickup if you're interested in that type of playstyle. I'm personally going to try and get Aventurine in my free-to-play account because I have Topaz and Numbi. Obviously, I have Dr. Ratio. And then Aventurine is going to complete that core for me. And I also need a second sustain because I only have Huohua in that account. Speaking about utility, as we were discussing about Luocha, he doesn't have any utility. Aventurine has a increased crit damage debuff that he plays on the enemy. So he places a debuff on the enemies that when he gets hit, they get dealt increased crit damage for about, I think that's about 12% or something like that. So there is a little bit of utility there. Something that Luocha just doesn't have. Like Luocha doesn't allow you to do more damage. He just protects your team. Not protects your team. He actually just heals your team. He doesn't provide anything else. He does it very well, but he doesn't do anything extra. All in all, Aventurine has a little bit more utility than Luocha, and I think he's going to be a better sustain than Luocha. Also, Aventurine gives your entire party essentially 50% effect resistance. That in of itself is going to enable so many things. So pretty much he gets you himself and the other support, actually everybody on your team, gets a free broken kill. That's pretty much that in of itself is pretty good. He pretty much activates broken kill for free whenever you have the shield up. So that's an extra 10, 20 damage, crit damage as well. On top of his crit damage debuff. So he's providing a lot of crit value just by being on the team with the correct planar ornaments. In my opinion, Luocha is looking like the second, I don't know, maybe second best sustain in the game. Because I don't know, I value Huohua a lot, and this may be a little biased, but I value Huohua quite a lot. Fushuan is undoubtedly number one in my opinion, but I think Aventurine is close. I don't think it's a close second, but I think he is second. And then I think Huohua is third, and then Luocha because of the lack of utility. And then Luocha, because of the lack of utility, I think is a little bit less valuable than the rest. But Aventurine is looking like a really, really strong sustain option. So early game people, if you don't have your second sustain, I would consider picking either Luocha or Aventurine. It's up to you, really. If you're looking for a follow-up character, then Aventurine is going to be your character. If you're going to pull for Topaz and Numbi, or you have Topaz and Numbi, then Aventurine is probably going to get a lot of value from being on your team. Otherwise, if you're looking, let's say you have a Don Hung Baby Lune, and you don't have a Sparkle or whatever, Luocha is probably the best bet there. If you have a Blade and you don't have a sustain for him, Luocha is probably the best bet. So it just varies on what the DPS and what kind of team comps are you looking for. Late game players, I would recommend going for Aventurine because like the second best healer we have is Japart. And then the only reason I'm saying this is because shields are incredibly strong in Simulated Universe. And if you don't have Japart, which you could eventually get at some point, but you could also not. I've summoned a bunch. I've lost almost every 50-50 on both my accounts. Haven't put a single Japart in any account. You could also not have Japart. As if you don't have Japart, Aventurine is going to be very, very strong for you. I think more than Luocha, because if you're a late game player, you can already clear MOC 12, 36 stars in Pure Fiction. So you really don't need more survivability than what you have right now. So Aventurine is going to provide you a little bit more sustain options. And then if you want to run a follow-up team, then also Aventurine is going to benefit from that. And your team is going to benefit from that. Also, if you need an extra little bit of crit damage just to like get you over the hump, Aventurine is going to provide that to you over Luocha. So, all right, guys, I think that is everything that I needed to talk about. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. What are you going to pull for in 2.1? And what are you most excited about this patch and the anniversary? Let me know in the comment section below. That's going to be it for today's video. Until next time, guys, see ya.